Tax cuts, the magical solution to all economic problems, or the fastest way to turn the national debt into a dumpster fire, depending on who you ask. President Trump is back with some spicy tax proposals, which are now official. So, we might be getting to see the biggest tax adjustments in U.S. history, which will save most of you a ton of money. And today, we're breaking them down faster than the IRS audits your Venmo transactions. His plans include extending the 2017 tax cuts from the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, removing taxes on overtime, tips, or Social Security, and surprisingly closing billionaire tax loopholes. We'll also go over a bit of the legislative procedure, the likelihood of these proposals passing, and the inevitable pros and cons. But first, please like and subscribe because this guy is still ahead of me. With that being said, here we go. First up, extending the 2017 tax cuts. President Trump's proposal aims to keep the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act that he implemented in 2017 alive beyond its scheduled deadline. Originally, the cuts were set to end in December 2025, and just in case you don't already know, here is an example of the current benefits you're receiving from these tax cuts. If you're making $59,000 a year, then you're paying $2,621 less annually in federal taxes thanks to the tax cuts. There is also a segment for business owners where they get a pretty good deduction of up to 20%. I don't really care about the rest of the benefits, but they're all linked below if you want to check them out for yourself. The upside to this extension is that it keeps corporate tax rates low and gives Americans more spending power and a potential boost to economic growth. If you believe trickle-down economics is just a myth, then you might be about to witness the impossible. The downside, as critics have argued, is that these cuts will only raise the already massive deficit and may not generate the promised job growth to balance out the continued loss in tax revenue, which are all good points. And I'd like to know what you guys think of these extensions in the comments below. And speaking of approval, extending these cuts isn't just a simple click and extend. It needs to pass through both houses of Congress, survive committee hearings, and potentially face a veto if the opposition is too strong. But given the current situation where the Republicans control everything, I don't think anybody cares about what the opposition has to say. Next, we have the proposal to eliminate taxes on overtime, tips, and Social Security. Finally, even more money in your pocket. If you're earning extra or relying on Social Security, this is huge for you, but if you work on a salary, you probably won't be affected as much as employees that work on an hourly rate. But don't worry, because people who are supposed to be getting taxed on tips see even less benefits than you because they already don't report their tips most of the time, allegedly. This proposal will give a lot of employees some extra breathing room, and in addition, the upside is that the true hard workers of the working class finally have a president who remembers they exist, and they finally get to keep what they worked for, so that's a double win. The downside, as the critics put it, is that it sounds too good to be true. They warn that this could potentially lead to cuts in essential government services or an increase in the national deficit, which I notice is the only thing these people can come up with to stand up to the president, but they've forgotten about the president's watchdog, who we'll get into in a second, has been cooking something in the kitchen. But back on topic, the process of changing these tax rules requires modifying the tax code, which is a tedious process in Congress that often nobody wants to do unless their billionaire owner is paying them extra. And I can almost certainly guarantee that fiscal conservatives who are worried about long-term budget impacts will crawl out of the shadows this time and raise their pitchforks. This proposal's chances hinge on political alliances and the current fiscal priorities of lawmakers, but I personally can't wait to see the ultra-wealthy give themselves massive tips of billions of dollars and abuse the hell out of these cuts. Lastly, and the most surprising promise from the president's proposal, is the cut on billionaire loopholes to avoid taxes. If you haven't noticed, billionaires have been snapping up sports teams like they're the new trends in high society. Also, they can write off the depreciation and other deductions on their tax bills by using stadiums and locker rooms as tools to lower their taxable income. Trump's proposal aims to shut this loophole down, but in the meantime, if any of you can afford to buy a sports team anytime soon, let me know so we can be friends. The good thing about this proposal is that it brings the billionaires off their high horse and forces them to fairly pay taxes, but that's ironic because the tips loophole puts them right back up there. This move is aimed to make the tax system a little more leveled by making billionaires pay extra taxes to combat the massive tax cuts that we dirt poor peasants are receiving. But the bad news is that not only will this be viewed as hostile to the billionaires, but they will be motivated to explore newer methods that can give them even more untaxed money, maybe like a law that says tips don't get taxed anymore. I'm joking, of course, but in all seriousness, sports teams are also viewed as legitimate businesses that provide jobs, and not all owners buy them only for the tax benefits. While I think the cuts will make billionaires pay a little more for a limited time, I'm sure they'll be using crypto to reduce their taxes by next week, and like I said, I find it ironic that billionaires will lose a loophole just to get another one all in the same proposal package. Realistically, a bill like this should be passed easily, however we seem to never hear about them a little after after they become conceptualized, but I have faith that with the current president, it'll be hard to lobby against this bill. So how likely is this package to pass? It all boils down to Congress. The proposal must clear committee reviews, be debated on the floor, and win votes in both the House and Senate. Then it faces the president's signature, or a veto which can only be reversed with a 2/3 majority in Congress. The reality is, with a divided Congress and competing priorities, none of these proposals are guaranteed, especially when you calculate that the loss in tax revenue for the elimination of the Social Security, tips, and overtime tax alone is around $2 to $4 trillion over a 10-year period. However, President Trump's watchdog, or Watch Doge, has been making moves, and in only 2 weeks in, the government already saves $1 billion every day. And remember that it's only been 2 weeks, and they've got 4 more years. Smash that like button if you enjoyed the ride, and subscribe for coverage of the hit TV show, American Politics. If you don't care about these tax cuts and want to reduce your taxes now, then click on the video on your screen to help you cut your taxes now. And remember, I'm not a financial or tax advisor, so do your own research, and I only take credit once you've made money, otherwise it's on you, so do your research for both of our sake. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.